All right, let's dive into something that's on a lot of people's minds lately. Should we be teaching finance in elementary schools? I mean, with everything from cashless payments to crazy inflation, money is a topic that's getting harder and harder to ignore, even for kids. So, is it really time to bring it into the classroom? Let's get into it. And that's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? On one hand, yeah, you absolutely want to set kids up for the future, but on the other hand, you don't want to strip away their childhood. It's a really tough balance to find. You know, the reason this is all coming up now is because our whole economic world is just changing so fast. Kids today are growing up where money is basically invisible, right? A simple tap pays for things, and grown-up topics like inflation are suddenly part of everyday conversation. This new reality is exactly why we're having this debate right now.
Okay, so let's start with the for side. Why are people so passionate about teaching this stuff early? Well, they don't just see it as another subject. They see it as a critical investment in a kid's entire future.
And here's the core idea for the people who are for this. Knowing about money isn't just about learning to budget. It's actually a tool for economic equality. The argument is that if we teach all kids the basics early on, we can help stop a huge wealth gap from ever forming in the first place.
And you might be thinking, is it really that bad? Well, the numbers are pretty eye-opening. A huge survey by the OECD found that about half of all adults in Japan just don't have a solid grasp on basic financial ideas. And that's not just a trivia question. It leads to real-world problems, from getting into debt to making bad investment choices.
Now, when you look at what's happening around the world, it paints a really interesting picture. Japan just recently started adding topics like asset formation to the high school curriculum in 2022. But other countries, they've been doing this for years. The UK, a ton of states in the US, they've already made financial ed mandatory. So from that perspective, Japan is kind of playing catch-up.
So to wrap up the for side, the argument is basically this. Kids are already part of the economy, with things like in-app purchases. Teaching them early can stop them from making big mistakes later and gives them a foundation for making smarter choices in life. Plus, they argue it doesn't have to be some brand new class. You can just weave it into subjects we already teach, like math and social studies.
Okay, that all sounds pretty convincing, right? But it's definitely not that simple. There's a really strong case against this whole push, and it's all about what's actually good for kids and what our schools can realistically handle.
Because for the folks on the other side of this, they see a whole bunch of problems hiding just beneath the surface. It's not as simple as just adding a new topic to the schedule.
And this right here, this is maybe the biggest practical problem. Our teachers are already swamped. Seriously, they're being asked to teach programming, more English, environmental topics, you name it. The opponents are asking, where does it stop? If you keep piling on more priority subjects, you risk burning out teachers and pushing other important stuff out.
And then there's the whole, are kids even ready for this question? I mean, are we really expecting first or second graders to understand super abstract ideas like risk, interest rates, or long-term investing? The worry is that you just be teaching them to memorize words they don't really get, and that's not real learning.
But this is where it gets into some really deep ethical territory. Is this education truly neutral? Some critics are saying, hang on a second. They argue that this whole push for financial literacy is actually a sneaky way to push a very specific worldview, one that says it's all about you, your own personal responsibility, and preparing you to be a good little soldier in a capitalist economy.
Yeah, it's a powerful question, and it really makes you stop and think. When does practical education about how the world works cross the line and become something else entirely?
So there you have it. Two completely different ways of looking at this. One side sees it as essential preparation for the modern world, while the other sees it as an inappropriate burden. So let's see how they really stack up against each other.
This table does a great job of showing where they just fundamentally disagree. Take the role of the school. Is it a safety net to fill in gaps from home, or is it overstepping its boundaries? What about child development? Is this about teaching practical skills, or are we just overloading them with abstract ideas? And teacher support. Can we really solve it with some outside help, or is that just another headache? On every single point, they have a completely different view of what school is for, and frankly, what childhood should be. So in the debate that this explainer is based on, they actually had to pick a winner. And after all the arguments were laid out, the verdict came down on the affirmative side, the side in favor of teaching finance early. The judgment was that they were just more persuasive, mainly because their case was built on hard data about what happens when people don't have this knowledge, and they made a strong argument that it's just something we have to do to adapt to the modern world.
But look, just because one side won the debate, that doesn't just, poof, make all the other problems go away, right? The against side brought up some incredibly important questions that are still completely unanswered. How do you actually do this without destroying our teachers? How do you make sure it closes inequality gaps instead of making them worse? And that big ethical question is still just sitting there.
And when you boil it all down, this whole thing really comes back to one crucial tension that, let's be honest, every parent and teacher deals with. How much do we prepare our kids for the sometimes harsh realities of the world they're going to face, and how much do we try to protect them and let them just be kids right now?
And that's what I want to leave you with. The world is changing like crazy, faster than ever before. So maybe the question isn't just about finance. Maybe the real question we should all be asking is, when we look at the future our kids are heading into, what should we be teaching them right now so they can thrive? What do you think? Thanks for tuning in.